Heather Kokubun lives in Lima, Peru, and she's testified by saying she's living the dream. Isn't that great? She's living the dream in Lima, Peru. As a child, she always dreamt to be in the mission field, and in Southern America especially. She met her husband Daniel here at Hyles-Anderson College, and soon the Lord would place them in the country of Peru. She served together there for 4 years to Daniel, and then the Lord had plans and other plans, and chose to take Daniel home in a situation that I just know Heather's going to share with you, and I just want her to relay her heart to you. But she sincerely loves the Lord. It is so evident. I had the opportunity to go to Peru last year, and our time spent together, it was life-changing for me. Here I was in a foreign field with people who speak different language, live a different culture, and Heather, as white as I am, embraced and loved, learned the culture, and all for the Lord. You know, and even after Daniel passed away, many said, Heather, you're going to come home? You're going to come back to the States? You're going to come back to your family? And this is what she said, I love my family, and I miss them, but I love him more. I think, what a beautiful testimony. After spending that time with her that week, I left there and I said to my husband, if we could get Heather to come and speak to our ladies, I just know it would be just as transforming to them as it was for me to have spent that time with her. Get your hearts ready.
Hello? Can I use this? Those are my friends, the ones that were yelling. I have the best friends ever. Hello? Yay, okay. I just know I'm gonna move, sorry. My name is Heather Kokubun, and it is a true honor and privilege to get to be here today. About 2 years ago, we had a young lady come down to Peru, and she was about 16, 17, and she was just what I needed, like at the perfect time in your life when God sends the exact thing that you need. And but she happened to arrive at 2 a.m. in the morning, like pretty much everyone who comes to Peru. It's okay. If you come see me, you're going to get there in the middle of the night, and we just love it that you come. So it's just the way it is. But I didn't really know her, and another family had gone to pick her up from the airport, but they'd asked if she could stay with me at my house. So of course I said, absolutely, I would love to have a fun 17-year-old come stay at my house. So it's like 2 in the morning, and I hear them banging on my door, and there's no way that you can really get into my house without going through about 10 minutes of bars and keys and doors and electric. I'm like the safest person in Peru. Seriously, legit. Everyone was like, wait, you're gonna live in a third world country alone as a white girl, but you don't know all the security on my house, and you don't know how strong he is. So he takes really good care of me. So, but I'm like stumbling all the way through our hallway, you know, like I throw on my glasses and I'm like trying to calm my hair down a little bit, like going to answer the door, you know, for this poor girl who's going to see me for the first time ever. And so I open the door and I'm like, hi, good evening, morning, day, I don't know. And she just kind of like froze. And I was like, hi, like I'm here. And I was like, thank you so much for coming. We're glad that, we're glad that you're here. And I'm like, I know I'm speaking English right now, so she should be understanding me. Why is she giving me the weirdest look ever? And then, so the family left, and she just kind of stood there with her suitcases right in my hallway. And I was like, well, come on down here. And she just kind of, she was still like, like, you have to talk to me first. And so I was like, well, my name's Heather, this is my house, well, apartment, so, like, what can I do for you? And she just looked at me and she said, you are not what I was expecting. And I was like, I am so sorry that I breathed, what do I tell you? And so I start like racking my brain, like, what in the world would she have been expecting? And so I kind of froze, and then I looked at her and I said, well, what were you expecting? And she didn't want to tell me. She got the look on her face like, and I was like, well, and so I began to think, and I thought the right thought. I said, they told you I was a widow, didn't they? And she was like, how did you know? And I was like, well, actually, I am a widow. And she goes, but you're not what I expected. And I said, I'm sorry, I don't know what to say then. And I said, well, what did you expect? And she said, well, I didn't know you were American. I said, well, I'm very much American, but I have a Peruvian heart, but I'm American. And she said, so I guess I was kind of imagining you to be like a lot shorter. Okay. And then she said, and I imagined you to be a lot older, because widows are usually old. And I was like, well, do I apologize for being young? Randomly awkward, so I'm a little young to be a widow. It's not my fault exactly, I didn't really know what to say. And so I'm just kind of looking at her, and she goes, and I thought you'd have black curly hair. And I said, well, I completely failed then, didn't I? She was like, yeah. I said, well, my name's Heather, and you're right, I'm a widow, but I'm tall, and I'm blonde, and I'm very, very white, and quite American, but I have a Peruvian heart. And then after that, everything was really, really good. So if I'm not what you were expecting, I'm terribly sorry. But God knows, and He has a reason and a way and that He does everything that He does in His life. So we have a man who comes around our neighborhood in Peru, and he washes cars. Now, of course, when my husband was alive, I would never, ever pay anyone to wash a car when there's two of us that are perfectly capable to wash our car. However, this man is very kind, and he comes by, and he does it for a mere $2. Inside and out, everything I need him to do. It's pretty amazing. So every once in a while, when I have a really bad day, I'll get desperate, and I'll pay Raphael to come wash my car. Okay? So one day, Raphael is over, and he's washing my car, and after he finishes, every time I always walk out to inspect the work that he has done on my vehicle. And so I'll walk out, and I'll kind of look at the car and see, that it's done just so before I hand him his 7 soles. So he finished and everything, and I don't know, I must have been in a bad mood. So I open the car door, and I look on the inside of the car where the cup holders are, and I noticed that they were still dirty. And I'm a very clean person, so I was kind of like, hey, Raphael, and so I sat in the seat, and I start messing with the cup holders, like, you didn't clean this, can you just hand me your rag? And he's like, he goes, I'll do that. I was like, no, it's really okay, I know how to clean, I'm quite capable, but he was like, no. And so being the independent, strong woman I am, I grabbed the cup holders, I'll do this myself, thank you. And so I reached in there, I grabbed it, and he was like, he starts telling me, he's like, Jocelyn, Heather, no, this is me, I'll do this. So I'm like, fine, I get out of the driver's seat, and he plops in, and he changes it and fixes it just like that, right? And then he looks at me, and he said, Jocelyn, which is my Spanish name, he said, Jocelyn, he said, I wash cars. It's what I do. I've done this for years. And sometimes I think that's what God does with us in our story. We want to be in the driver's seat, and we want to say, no, I know where I'm going, I know what I want to do, I can do it just fine myself, thank you very much, but give me the steering wheel. And God looks at us and says, I've done this for years. I'm the master author. I can write your story. I'm perfectly capable of doing it. But sometimes we're a little bit stubborn, right? No, I'll do it, it's fine. But God, when He writes our story, He writes a perfect story. And He knows exactly how to write your story. So, a little bit of my story is that on April 29th of 2015, that morning, I happened to be reading in my Bible in Romans 8. So if you will, open your Bibles, please, to Romans 8. Romans 8 is one of my favorite chapters in the entire Bible. I love it, love it, love it. There's so many jewels inside of it. I was having my quiet time with the Lord, and how many of you like to have Jesus and coffee at the same time? Thank God for coffee. It was a great day. It really, really was. I was calmly reading my Bible, and that day I happened to read Romans 8. So in my journal, I just felt impressed by the Holy Spirit to write, Heather, no matter what happens, always, always, always remember that nothing can separate you from my love. Nothing can separate you from my love. And nothing can separate any of us from the precious and incredible and immense and audacious love of God. That day was a pretty normal day. It was a good day, but I was a little bit worried. It was a Wednesday, so Wednesday night we get in our car and we're headed home. Now we have had a few unusual happenings to us since we went to Peru. It's not, like I said, it is third world and it's not exactly safe in every respect of the word. So for some reason we got in the car and I just had this feeling that something was about to happen to us. Perhaps you've had the same feeling, but we got in the car and I'm like locking the doors, like reaching across my husband, like, please lock your door. You know, it's only 2 miles home, but it doesn't matter. Something might happen, and I just had this crazy feeling on the inside of me that something was going to happen. And so we got in the car, and we were safe, and I literally like prayed the entire way till we got home. Like, Lord, please help us, please get us home. We got home, everything was perfectly fine, we were safe. And then our neighbors, they needed some help. And so my husband, being the amazing guy he was, he went to help them. That night, I believe that the Lord took him very quickly to heaven. However, that night he fell about 20 feet from the air, and he fell on his head on concrete. And so I was there with him. I saw it happen, and as soon as it happened, I raced out our door down to the bottom floor, and I started like pounding on the door, like, let me through. I've got to make sure he's okay. I remember going through there, and I remember thinking in my mind, God, please let him be alive. Please let him be breathing. If he's breathing, everything's okay. As long as he's breathing, everything is perfectly fine. So I went in, and I kind of scared the neighbors, but I was like, please let me get in. Inside the houses there, the best way to describe it is that there are windows, but because of security reasons, it's like walled off. So they put windows like in the middle of your house, and then those windows go from the bottom floor all the way to the 4th, 5th, 6th floor, so that air can flow, so that sunlight can come through. So he fell through one of those. So I went into their house, and shortly thereafter, he was in a coma for about 6 days. And then it was time to bury him. And before I could even process everything, I was sitting in the hospital waiting for him to die and preparing to bury him. How does one get through a burial? He was 26 years old. I couldn't call. I called my in-laws because I felt like it was my responsibility, but I couldn't even call my mom to tell her. I called my friend, and my friend had to call my mom because I couldn't get the words to come out of my mouth. How do I call my in-laws and say, oh, by the way, I don't think your son is about to make it? And we see how sometimes God works and it seems like such a mess to us. And we ask, how can this mess, this wreck, this blood, these tears be part of something beautiful? And everything inside us says, no. We want to scream, no, not this. I wanted to tell God, God, didn't you see that we are serving you? Didn't we see that we gave everything up so we could come to Peru to serve you? Didn't you see that we sold our possessions, we gave everything just to be here? Why couldn't you have picked anybody else on the planet? There's plenty of people that don't even care about living. There's plenty of people that aren't doing a single thing with their life. So why are you going to pick my husband who has a desire to do something great and big for you? Why him? Why me? I began to question, like, what in the world is going on? Don't pick the most amazing person I ever know. You couldn't have messed with somebody else's world besides mine? What are you doing? And in those moments that I felt most tempted to believe that God simply doesn't care anymore. Much easier it would be to believe in a God who's simply super far off, that it really doesn't matter to him, that it really doesn't matter. I wanted to ask if I had done something wrong as a wife. Like, what did I do so wrong that you would decide to take my husband? Why this heartbreak? Why this trial? I wanted to scream, anything but death. Nothing, anything. I'll take any other trial. You know, you want to look at someone else and say, can I have that one? Please, someone give me their trial, not this one. Have you ever found yourself there? Heartbreak comes to us in a myriad of situations, in a myriad of circumstances. Perhaps nothing that we ever plan on, perhaps something that we could never even dream or fathom. And all of a sudden, it's there in front of us, and we're just expected to receive it. I began questioning God. I began questioning his very existence. Why? What are you doing? Why? We become in the depths of despair. There's tears of terror. We're frightened in fear. And we're stuck scared in silence, almost too mortified to move. We're numb to the nightmare, dumbed in disbelief. Someone tell me that I'm dreaming, and please, for goodness sake, just wake me up. Tell me that this never happened. Charles Spurgeon said, "Hearts are broken in 10,000s of ways, for this is a heartbreaking world, and Christ is good at healing all manner of broken hearts." But I wanted to scream on the inside, "God, I don't want a broken heart. I don't want a broken life. What are you doing? Why are you taking away my title? Everything that I said, I would get to be a pastor's wife, I get to be a youth pastor's wife, we get to do this and we get to do this," and all of a sudden it was all just taken away, and people were staring at me saying, "You're a single missionary." I didn't try to do that, I promise. My mom used to make homemade bread when we were young. And she would try to make it the absolute healthiest that she possibly could. So what did she do? She would take wheat, and she would grind the wheat until it's flour and add it to the bread. The wheat is not useful until it can be ground up, until it's that flour, and added into the bread. When the wheat is ground completely to powder, that is when it becomes useful. And sometimes I think that God does that in our lives. So many times I would just look at him and say, "Why are you breaking my heart again?" He died once, but it felt like he died 1,000 times. 10,000s of memories and things that hit you at the weirdest times, and you find yourself crying again. God, why? Why did you have to choose something so painful? But what if coming to the end of ourselves is the beginning to coming to know and truly experience the power of Christ? What if we don't truly know the power of God until we come to the end of us and we see that we're really nothing? That we really have absolutely nothing to offer? Because until we really see how weak we are, we can't acknowledge how strong he is. If we are something, then God cannot be everything that we need him to be. About a week after Daniel was gone, I was still in the country of Peru, and I had just gotten home from Bible study. My mother-in-law was there with me, and I just finished washing the dishes. I'm a real go-getter, so I have to do like everything at once. So I just finished washing the dishes, and there was like nothing else for me to do. So I finished washing the dishes, and she went back to the bedroom, and I found myself standing at our 2 double doors. We're blessed, we live on the 2nd floor, and so we overlook a beautiful park. So there are these double doors, and my husband had taught me, we had, like 8 months earlier, our house had been robbed. We lost a lot of our possessions, and it was very hard for me. And my husband was the one who really walked me through that trial. He taught me to pray for the people. He helped me not to get bitter at them for taking away our things. And so he told me, he said, "Heather, I think you should try to become like Daniel. 3 times a day, you go to those 2 double doors, and you pray for the people of Peru." And that started to change my life. But I walked out to those 2 double doors, and I found myself. And I was just standing there. And it was like all of a sudden I realized what I was doing, and I realized that I was waiting for him to come home again. And it was in that moment that I wept for the first time. And I looked up at God and I said, "God, he's never ever coming home again, is he? He'll never be here again, will he? Not a phone call, not a text, nothing." And that's the first time in my entire life that I truly wept. I went and I crawled up on the couch and I just began to cry and to cry and to cry. I said, "Why, God? Why? What did I do that was so wrong that you would take him? Tell me what I did. Anything, tell me what I did, and I promise you I'll change it, I promise. I'm so sorry. If you would have told me a couple weeks ago, I would have changed it, I promise, God. Tell me what I did wrong." When I finished crying, I made God a promise. Have you ever done that? When I finished crying, I looked up at God and I said, "God, I don't know a thing about grief. But I made that day what I call the third best decision that I've ever made in my life. I told God, no matter what else you do in my life, I promise you that I will trust you. And no matter how hard I might grieve and how many times I might cry, at the end of every single time that I cry or whatever I do, I promise you I'm going to tell you one thing, and that is that I trust you. And every time that I did, I would always end, but God, you know that I trust you. It seems so simple. In the Bible, we learn and we memorize as children Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not unto your own understanding. And then we grow up into adults and we think that everything should still be logical, right? I should be able to figure out in my mind why God would choose to kill a 26-year-old youth pastor who'd given up everything to go to the mission field, right? Like somehow there has to be some kind of logic there, right? And lean not unto your own understanding. Don't you dare. Don't even think about trying to figure it out in your mind. He is the author of our story, and he gets to choose how he writes our story. And our job is to get to be the characters in his story. We get to learn to follow his hand and his plan. An author named Paul David Tripp, he said, "So rest is never found in the quest to understand it all. No, rest is found in trusting in the one who understands it all and rules it all for his glory and our good." He also said, "The best theology will not remove mystery from your life. So rest is never found," forgive me, perdóname, forgive me, I'm going to start over. Lest my mind change to Spanish. Here we go. Ready? "The best theology will not remove mystery from your life. So rest is found in trusting the one who rules, is all, and knows no mystery. How else can we be still and know that he is God if we're not willing to trust him with our story?" Each and every one of us has a story. And each and every one of us, we don't necessarily get to control what happens in our story. But I just finished talking to the teenagers. The one thing we do get to control is the way we respond. It's our reaction. How do we respond to the trials that he places in our lives? We can't understand God's thoughts. In Isaiah 55, 8 and 9, it says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." I just need one moment, please. At my church, they love me dearly, but they always say, "Hey, Heather, at what minute are you going to make everyone cry?" I'm like, I don't make people cry. I just accidentally cry, and then they cry too. Like my pastor will be like, "You have it programmed, you know, like at minute 17 and 38 seconds that you're going to," "What? No?" And he never believes me. He's like, "You try to pull that innocent card all the time." What? How is it that we're so willing in marriage to promise to that other person, for better, for worse, for richer and poorer, in sickness and in health? We're willing to offer that to a human being who we know is a human being, has sin in their lives, and as much as they love you and as much as they can convince you that they love you, you know that at some point in your life, that person will end up failing you or hurting you, or both, multiple times, right? So how is it that we will willingly make a vow to a human being, for better, for worse, for richer, for poor, in sickness and in health, but then all of a sudden when it comes to God, we come to God and we say, "I will serve you, however, you better make sure that there's never a church split, that my pastor never fails, that I have a nice car to drive, that my children are safe, that we have this, that we have this." We're willing to give ourselves away at the altar, absolutely. I think I was the most excited bride. I think I practically scared the entire church because I was so happy to get married. And they were like, everyone was like, are you nervous? I was like, no way, let's do this. Like, I'm happy. And they like couldn't believe it. I was like, are you kidding? I've been waiting for this. This is going to be amazing. I was so happy about it, right? Giving myself away at the altar for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer. And marriage is an absolutely wonderful thing. And we're freely willing to make a vow to a human being who we know will at some point fail us, even if they don't want to. We're human, we kind of can't help it. We kind of all have sin that runs through these veins. But somehow when it comes to God, oh, don't you dare hurt me. Oh, don't you dare do something that's going to cause difficulty in my life. We feel like the world should, well, if I'm serving you, God, then everything better go well, right? I mean, I did remember, I gave everything up to go to Peru. Remember when I hugged my mom and she stayed there and she was bawling there in the airport? Remember that? Like, I should be exempt from any other trials, right? And that was one of the biggest things that I learned to tell God. God, whatever you do, I will choose to trust you, and I will choose to rest in your love. We want the welfare Christianity. God, I'll follow you as long as, well, here's my list. Where do you want me to leave it? You know that I'm your servant, right? I'm a missionary. I'm going to do your will with all of my heart. So therefore, everything's going to go right for me, right? Right? Sure. But I learned that life does not revolve around us. God has his story, and he's writing it perfectly in my life and in yours. My job is to learn to trust. Trust in his plan. Trust even in the trials. What if the deepest hurts are really life's biggest blessings? One of the days that I was grieving, I live about 10 minutes from the beach. I did not know that when I went to the mission field, by the way. I was walking, one day my parents live out by a lake, and so I was walking by the lake. I'm an introvert, I prefer to be like alone, so I was walking by the lake one day, and I saw my parents' beautiful lake, and I was just looking at God because I knew Lima had 9 million people, so I figured we were going to be crammed into some tiny little apartment. So we're walking by the lake, and I was talking to God, and I was like, I'm going to miss this lake so much. But I told God, I said, God, I give you this lake. It's yours. It's really an ugly lake. I mean, the water is filthy, it's gross, disgusting, everything. But I love that lake. And I told God when we were going to Peru, I said, God, I give you the lake, I give you the country, I give it all, it's for you, just take it. Then we got to Peru, and guess what? I live 10 minutes from the beach. It's amazing, and it's beautiful. But when I was grieving very heavily one day, I took off running toward the beach. I was really mad at God. I just got angry. Like, why in the world? And I would say I was probably like 8 months into my grief. And I was just really having a hard time that day. And I ran out to the beach where nobody was, where no one could see me, and I just started yelling, you know, like a good Christian. Yeah. What in the world? You know, the tears were streaming down my face, and I made sure that no one else could see the crazy white girl who was over there. But everyone was gone, and no one was there. I promise, no one saw me. And but I went, and I just yelled, and I just let it all out at the beach. And I started walking back to my house, and I felt really ashamed. It was like all of a sudden, like, wait, why did I just, you know? And I started to feel really bad. And I was like, God, I'm sorry. You don't deserve that. And in that moment, it brought me back to a time when I'd had a discussion with my husband. And I was apologizing to him about being a jerk for something. I'm sure it was my fault. Okay, it was probably his. No, I'm sure it was all my fault, and I had been a complete jerk, and I apologized to him. And at that moment that I apologized to him, he looked at me and he said, Heather, he said, you know I didn't marry you because I thought you were perfect. You know I didn't marry you only because of your good qualities. And I was like, what? And I kind of looked at him like, no, but I mean, that was total jerk material, so it's okay, you know, it's okay. And he looked at me in the eyes and he said, no, I married you for all of you. And when I made you a promise, that meant I was going to love all of you. And he said, of course I forgive you. And he never ever spoke about that day again. He said, all of me loves all of you. And I was walking back from the beach, and it was like God put the song, the little thought right back in my mind. Heather, all of me loves all of you. And you can act like a jerk and you can yell at those waves all you want to, and I'll still love you. And that's one of the most beautiful things about God, is because it doesn't matter how much we lose it, we can always come crawling back on our knees and say, oh God. And he'll bend down and he'll reach out and he'll grab your hand again, and he'll look at you in the face and say, I love you. And nothing that you do can separate you from my love. And nothing that I write in your story can separate you from my love. When I went back to the house after my husband had passed away, I opened up my journal, and I'd completely forgotten what I had written there. When we left, it was like with the ambulance super fast, blah, 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 you know. And but when I came home, I got out my journal again, and I looked, and the last journal entry is what I told you all at the beginning of this message. Heather, don't forget that no matter what happens in your life, nothing can separate you from my love. And then if you read the list, guess what the first thing on the list is? Death. Just so you know, even death can't separate you from my love. And even if I take away your one most important person, I still love you. And now I see that he took away my one most important person because he wanted to become all. And he knew that until he did that. Maybe I wouldn't get to know him like I know him now. And he's a very good God. And he works on our behalf out of pure love for each and every one of us. Where are the Christians who will stand up and say, God, no matter what you do in my life, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, God, I will follow you. It's so much easier to get bitter. It's so much easier to leave that church and to go to some other place. It's so much easier to close the door. Don't talk about that. I don't want to face the trial, God, that you have placed right in my life. It's so much easier to blame someone else. Well, it's their fault. It's their fault. Trust me, my neighbors were kind of slightly worried that I was going to blame them. But I chose in my mind and my heart I would never, ever blame anyone else. And God, it's part of his perfect story for my life. Part of his perfect story. Where are the Christians who will say, God, I don't know what you're going to want to do with my life, but I'm going to take my list of expectations of, well, I'll follow you if, and I'm going to tear it up and simply tell you that, God, I will love all of you. Because he's already loved all of us. He gave all that he is for us. And he loves us dearly. And if he never ever did one other thing than die on the cross for us, it would be sufficient love forever. Elizabeth Elliot was always one of my special lady heroes of the faith. But then when I lost my husband and I found out, hey, we were both widows early in life, I started grabbing everything that she had written. She says, faith need never ask, but what good did this do to me? Faith already knows that everything that happens fits into a pattern for good to those who love God. An inconvenience is always, whether we see it or not, a blessed inconvenience. We may rest in the promise that God is fitting together a good many more things than are any of our business. We need never see what good it did or how a given trouble accomplishes anything. It is peace to leave it all with him, asking only that he do with me anything he wants, anywhere, anytime, that he may be glorified. And that's really what it's all about. The way that he writes our story. He's very good. He writes our story for us, and he also writes it for his glory, because he wants more glory. Today, would you make a decision to trust him? To surrender perhaps your dreams or your plans? Because I promise you that when you do, when you choose to surrender all that you are, you just might find out that his plans and dreams for you are much better than yours could have ever been. Today, would you trust him? It will make it much easier someday should he choose to bring a trial to your life if you'll make a decision now. No matter what, I will trust you. For better, for worse, for richer, for poor, in sickness and in health, God, I will be yours. Would you be willing to surrender your all to him? For better or for worse?